Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Ghostly Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Taoist Gong. There was a Taoist surnamed Gong, whose first name and origin were unknown to people. One day, he went to the Duke of Lu's residence to request an audience, but the doorkeeper refused to announce him. At that moment, a eunuch came out from inside, and Taoist Gong bowed, asking him for help to deliver a message. The eunuch, seeing that he looked coarse and unrefined, shooed him away. However, not long after, Taoist Gong returned. The eunuch was very angry and ordered his men to drive him away while beating him. They walked to a deserted area, and Taoist Gong, smiling, took out 200 taels of gold and asked the person pursuing him to tell the eunuch. Please inform him that I don't actually want to see the Duke. I just heard that the pavilions in the back garden of the Duke's residence offer a rare view of the world. If he could lead me to take a look, I would have no other wishes in life. After saying this, he took out some silver to give to the person pursuing him. Naturally, the man was very pleased and went back to relay the message to the eunuch. The eunuch was also delighted to see the gold and led Taoist Gong through the back door of the Duke's residence into the garden, where he saw all kinds of sights. The eunuch then took Taoist Gong up to the tower. Just as they reached the window, Taoist Gong gave him a push, and the eunuch felt his body falling from the loft. Just then, a thin vine wrapped around the eunuch's waist. His body hung in mid-air, but when he looked down, he found that he was still far from the ground. The eunuch felt dizzy and heard the vine creaking as if it would break, which terrified him, and he began to scream loudly. Before long, several other eunuchs arrived, all of them scared out of their wits. Seeing that the eunuch was so high off the ground, they quickly went upstairs to check. They found that the other end of the vine was tied to the window frame and tried to untie it to rescue the eunuch, but the vine was too thin, and no one dared to pull hard. Some searched for Taoist Gong, but he had already disappeared. Everyone was at a loss and could only report the matter to the Duke of Lu. When the Duke arrived in the back garden and saw the situation, he was puzzled. He ordered thick straw and cotton to be laid on the ground before deciding to cut the vine. Just as they finished spreading the straw and cotton, the vine suddenly snapped with a loud bang, and the eunuch fell heavily. However, they did not expect that the eunuch was only a foot off the ground at that moment. The crowd exchanged glances, both surprised and amused. The Duke of Lu ordered an immediate investigation into where Taoist Gong lived. Upon hearing that Taoist Gong was currently staying at Scholar Shang's home, he sent someone to inquire, only to find out that Taoist Gong had not yet returned from his outing. Later, the officials encountered Taoist Gong on their way back to the palace and brought him to meet the Duke. The Duke hosted a banquet and invited Taoist Gong to take a seat, also asking him to perform some illusions. Taoist Gong replied, "I am just a simple countryman without any special skills. Since you, my lord, have shown me such kindness, I will take the liberty of presenting a performance to wish you longevity." He then pulled out a small beautiful woman from his sleeve and placed her on the ground. The woman bowed to the Duke, and Taoist Gong commanded her to perform the Yao Qi banquet, wishing the Duke everlasting life. The woman recited a few opening lines. Taoist Gong then took out another woman, who introduced herself as the Queen Mother. Before long, he pulled out many celestial maidens from his sleeve, one by one placing them on the ground. Finally, he pulled out the Weaver Girl. The Weaver Girl presented a magnificent garment to the Duke, which shone with golden light and instantly brightened the palace. The Duke suspected the garment was fake and reached for it. Taoist Gong quickly said, "No, you cannot." Ignoring him, the Duke took the garment to examine it and discovered that it was indeed a seamless heavenly garment, not something that could be sewn by human hands. Taoist Gong, displeased, said, "I sincerely borrowed this heavenly garment from the heavenly realm for you, my lord. Now it has been polluted by the filth of the human world. How can I return it to its rightful owner?" The Duke believed that those singing and performing women were surely celestial maidens and wanted to keep one or two by his side. However, upon closer inspection, the maidens turned into the singers of his own palace. The Duke was puzzled because he had never heard the songs the singers were performing. Upon inquiring, the singers themselves did not know what they were singing. Taoist Gong placed the heavenly garment on the fire to singe it a bit and then returned it to his sleeve. When the Duke asked to check his sleeve again, he found that the heavenly garment had disappeared. Because of this, the Duke paid special attention to Taoist Gong and allowed him to stay in his own residence. Taoist Gong said to the Duke, "I am used to wandering outside. Although your palace is luxurious, to me, it feels like a cage. Please let me continue to stay at Scholar Shang's house. That would make me feel more comfortable." From then on, the Duke and Taoist Gong often met, but whenever midnight approached, Taoist Gong would definitely return to Scholar Shang's home. Sometimes when the Duke insisted on keeping him, he would stay overnight at the palace. Taoist Gong often conjured out-of-season flowers and trees as games during banquets. The Duke asked Taoist Gong, "I've heard that celestial beings can have romantic feelings for one another. Is that true?" Taoist Gong replied, "Perhaps celestial beings are as you say. But I am not a celestial being. My heart is like dead wood, devoid of romantic feelings." One night, the Duke kept Taoist Gong at the palace and sent a young singer to test him in the middle of the night. The singer entered the room where Taoist Gong was staying and called out several times but received no response. When she lit a lamp and looked, she saw Taoist Gong sitting on the bed with his eyes closed. The singer shook Taoist Gong gently, and he opened his eyes briefly before closing them again. When she shook him again, Taoist Gong had already started snoring. The singer pushed him with all her might, and Taoist Gong fell over, lying on the bed and snoring like thunder. The singer tapped his forehead, and it produced a sound like banging on an iron pot. The singer returned to report this to the Duke. The Duke then had someone stab Taoist Gong with a needle, but it could not penetrate. The person tried pushing Taoist Gong with all his strength, but he remained completely still. The Duke then ordered more than 10 people to lift Taoist Gong and throw him to the floor, yet he landed like a 1,000-pound boulder, making a huge noise. When morning came, everyone went to check, and Taoist Gong was still sleeping on the ground. When he awoke, he smiled and said, "I slept so soundly that I didn't even know I fell off the bed." Later, some women would joke with him whenever he was sitting or lying down to sleep. At first, when they pressed him, his body remained soft, but upon pressing harder, he became as hard as a rock. Taoist Gong lived at Scholar Shang's home and often didn't return until midnight, so Scholar Shang locked the door. However, when Scholar Shang went to open the door in the morning, he found Taoist Gong already sleeping in the bedroom. Initially, Scholar Shang had been romantically involved with a singing girl named Hui Gu, and they had vowed to become husband and wife. Hui Gu sang exceptionally well and had outstanding musical skills. Upon hearing about her, the Duke of Lu summoned her to the palace to serve him. From then on, Hui Gu and Scholar Shang were forced to cut off contact. Although they often missed each other, they could not meet. One night, Scholar Shang asked Taoist Gong, "You often go to the palace. Have you seen Hui Gu?" Taoist Gong replied, "I have seen the palace's singing maidens, but I don't know Hui Gu or which one she is." Scholar Shang then described her appearance and mentioned her age, at which point Taoist Gong said he had indeed seen her. Scholar Shang pleaded with Taoist Gong to help him send a message, but Taoist Gong laughed and said, "I don't care for worldly affairs of love and won't act as a carrier pigeon for you." Scholar Shang refused to give up and continued to plead earnestly. Taoist Gong then opened his sleeve and said, "If you really want to see Hui Gu, then come into my sleeve." When Scholar Shang looked inside, he was surprised to find that it was as spacious as a room. Scholar Shang bent down and crawled inside, discovering that the interior was bright and roomy, resembling a hall. Inside the sleeve were tables, chairs, beds, and stools. Living there didn't feel cramped at all. Taoist Gong went to the palace and played chess with the Duke. When he saw Hui Gu arrive, he pretended to dust off his robes with his sleeve. With a wave of his sleeve, Hui Gu entered, and it seemed as if no one around had noticed. At that moment, Scholar Shang was sitting in the sleeve, deep in thought, when he suddenly saw a beautiful woman fall in from the outside. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was Hui Gu. They were overjoyed to see each other and exchanged warm greetings. Scholar Shang said to Hui Gu, "We must remember this unexpected encounter today. Let's compose a poem together." Scholar Shang took up a brush and wrote on the wall, "You went to the palace, and we lost contact." Hui Gu continued, "Who would have thought I would see you again at the palace?" Scholar Shang wrote, "The universe within the sleeve is truly vast." Hui Gu added, "The thoughts of lovers can fully embrace." Just as they finished writing, 5 people suddenly entered. They wore octagonal caps and light red clothes, and the two did not recognize them at all. Without saying a word, the 5 grabbed Hui Gu and took her away. Scholar Shang was both startled and frightened, unsure of what was happening. After Taoist Gong returned to Scholar Shang's home, he asked Scholar Shang to come out of his sleeve and inquired about Huigu. Scholar Shang concealed some details and didn't recount the entire incident. Taoist Gong smiled and took off his robe, turning it inside out for Scholar Shang to see. Upon closer inspection, Scholar Shang could faintly make out the writing, which was as small as lice. It turned out to be the poem he had just written with Huigu on the wall. After more than 10 days, Scholar Shang once again requested to enter the sleeve to meet Huigu. They met 3 times in total. Huigu told Scholar Shang, "I think I'm already pregnant. I can clearly feel the baby moving. I'm very worried. During the day, I can only bind my waist and abdomen with a belt. But there are too many people in the palace. If I give birth to the child, the baby's cries will surely alarm the Duke of Lu. You must discuss this with Taoist Gong and ask him to save our child." Scholar Shang agreed. When Scholar Shang saw Taoist Gong, he knelt down and did not rise. Taoist Gong helped him up and said, "I have heard what you said. Please do not worry. This child is your family's hope for continuation. How can I not do my utmost to help? But from now on, you should not go to the palace anymore. My help is not out of sympathy for your feelings for Huigu." A few months later, Taoist Gong returned from outside, smiling as he said, "I've brought your son. Quickly, bring me the swaddling cloth for the baby." Scholar Shang had a very virtuous wife, nearly 30 years old, who had given birth to several children, with only one son surviving. Recently, she had just given birth to a daughter, but the baby had died shortly after a month. Hearing that her husband had another son, she joyfully came out of the house. Taoist Gong took the baby from his sleeve. The child was soundly asleep, and the umbilical cord had not yet fallen off. When Scholar Shang's wife received the child, she immediately cried out. Taoist Gong then took off his robe and said, "Blood has splattered on my clothes, which is a taboo for those who practice Taoism. Today, I have even discarded this robe I've worn for 20 years for you." Scholar Shang helped him change into another outfit. Taoist Gong instructed, "Do not throw away my old robe. Burn it, and your wife can eat the ashes to treat difficult births or stillbirths." Scholar Shang heeded his advice and kept the robe. Taoist Gong stayed at Scholar Shang's house for a long time. One day, he told Scholar Shang, "You should treasure the robe you have kept, and if necessary, leave a bit for yourself. After my death, you must not forget this matter." Scholar Shang thought Taoist Gong's words were ominous. Taoist Gong said no more and left Scholar Shang's home. He went to the palace and told the Duke of Lu, "I am about to die." The Duke was surprised and asked what was going on. Taoist Gong replied, "A person's lifespan is predetermined. There is nothing to explain." The Duke, seeing him in good health, did not believe it and insisted on keeping him in the palace. As they were playing a game of chess, Taoist Gong suddenly stood up and said he wanted to leave, but the Duke naturally would not allow it. Taoist Gong requested to go to another room outside, and the Duke agreed. Soon after, Taoist Gong ran into the room and lay down. When the Duke entered, he saw that Taoist Gong had already died. The Duke prepared a coffin for him and buried him with honor. Scholar Shang came to the grave, weeping and feeling deep sorrow. At that moment, he realized that Taoist Gong's earlier words had all been true. The robe left by Taoist Gong was used to help people with childbirth and was very effective. People came to Scholar Shang's house one after another seeking the remedy. At first, Scholar Shang used the blood-stained sleeve for people, and later he cut off pieces from the robe's collar and hem, which were also effective. Following Taoist Gong's advice and suspecting his wife might have difficulties during childbirth in the future, he cut a palm-sized piece from the robe that had been stained with fetal blood and kept it safe. Just at that time, the Duke of Lu's favorite concubine was in labor but had not given birth for 3 days, and the doctors were at a loss. Someone reported Scholar Shang's situation to the Duke, who immediately summoned him. The concubine consumed a bit of the ashes from the robe, and the child was born. The Duke was overjoyed and rewarded Scholar Shang with a large amount of silver and colorful silk, but Scholar Shang politely declined them all. When the Duke asked what he wanted, Scholar Shang said, "I dare not say it." After the Duke pressed him several times, he finally knelt and bowed, saying, "If you are compassionate, please give me your singer Hui Gu, and I will be satisfied." The Duke then called Hui Gu and asked her age. Hui Gu replied, "I came to the palace when I was 18 and have lived here for 14 years. The Duke thought Hui Gu was too old, so he summoned all the singers, allowing Scholar Shang to choose, but he did not like any of them. The Duke laughed and said, "You truly are a foolish scholar. Did you make a betrothal agreement more than 10 years ago?" Scholar Shang then told the Duke the truth. The Duke solemnly prepared a carriage and horses for them, still insisting on giving Scholar Shang the silver and colorful silk he had declined, as Hui Ji's dowry, and sent them home. The son born to Hui Gu was named Xiusheng, which means born from the sleeve. He was now 11 years old. Scholar Shang often remembered the kindness of Taoist Gong and would visit his grave every year during the Qingming festival to pay his respects. One day, a traveler who had been staying in Sichuan encountered Taoist Gong on the road. Taoist Gong took out a scroll and said to the traveler, "This is something from the Duke of Lu's palace. I was in a hurry when I came to Sichuan and did not have time to return it. Please help me take it back." When the traveler returned home, he heard that Taoist Gong had already passed away and felt that the matter was suspicious, so he did not dare report it to the Duke. After hearing about it, Scholar Shang informed the Duke. The Duke looked at the book and found it was indeed the one Taoist Gong had borrowed. People began to doubt the circumstances of Taoist Gong's death, so they opened his tomb, only to find that there was no body in the coffin. Later, Scholar Shang's eldest son died at a young age, but fortunately, the family still had Xiusheng, which made him realize that Taoist Gong had already predicted everything. At the end of the story, the author includes the following commentary. "They say that the world is in the sleeve, and I always thought that was merely an ancient legend. Could there really be such a thing? It is truly strange. In the sleeve, there is heaven and earth, sun and moon, and one can even marry and have children. In such a world, there are no burdens of taxes or military service, nor the troubles of human affairs. I imagine that the lice or fleas in the sleeve may appear to those within it as chickens and dogs do in the peach blossom spring. If such a place could allow people to reside there permanently, then living there until death would be worth it. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tale, Taoist Gong. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.